together when you're talking about a party that's known for state rights and then feels like they're not paying attention to the rights of this state and the people in this state. So again, 25,000 people. We've been here since 8:30 this morning, and they were peaceful, and they were chanting, and we had folks doing orange juice on the side of the road, and a lot of music, and it was more of a festival feel. And then just in the last hour, people have shown up. I can't tell you if they were here for the actual protest at 10 a.m., at 9 a.m., or if they have just started to show up, but this group is definitely a lot more agitated and appears to be a lot younger. We definitely had a different generation that was out here, excuse me, residual tear gas, that was out here several hours ago than we have right now. But being young, part of that is being passionate, and they don't always express it in the most understandable way, but that doesn't mean their passion and their frustration isn't concerning and certainly worth listening to here in this community. So we don't know, right? We don't know how many of these people were here earlier and how many just showed up to do this, as we are getting close to that 8 o'clock hour where there is supposed to be a curfew, and they want to make sure that they can let their voice or their actions be heard and seen in whatever way that they want to.
Yeah, and Joy, I'm watching these people walk back to the intersection where we were seeing a lot of that action just moments ago take place, where the tear gas was deployed. Is law enforcement moving back, or are they pushing towards law enforcement?
They're not. So the group is pushing towards law enforcement, and I want to get a little bit, if you can see this. A few minutes ago, before the tear gas, you had the LAPD that was lined up on the right-hand side here. Can you show them that, Gus? Oh, I'll show you the booms, the bangs and the booms, because that's why people are tuning in right now. So you can see the green there, the green smoke. That is the tear gas. That's the stuff that's going to sting your eyes, and it smells like you're inhaling like a gajillion peppers. That's what it smells like, and that's what it tastes like, and nobody wants to be close to it. Yes, the yellowish green there is coming this way, and so as it starts to come this way, you'll see this group, and a lot of them aren't really being agitators. They're just being looky-loos because they want to see what's going on and they want to show it to you. Oh, but here it comes. It's going to be oh so much fun. And you can see the group that is dispersing right now and the ones that are running and still waving the flags, and you can see the ones that are really the agitators are coming in with the gas masks on. And we got our guy with the American flag and the boogie boards, who seems to be having a blast right now. They have tried to shoot him with those rubber bullets several times, and he keeps deflecting them as they want him to go. And they want this crowd to stay back and get away from this corner, because they're now starting to come in from 3 different directions. But again, you have the sheriff's department, you have the police department, and you also have the National Guard if you go a little bit further down to where Zach was, closer to the federal building. But yeah, they're pushing them back, and then they move forward, and then they push them back, and they move forward. And so is the dance that we do when we have a protest like this one. This is not the first time we have seen something like this in downtown Los Angeles, and I dare say it will not be the last. But it is something that, unfortunately, those of us in this particular industry have gotten used to, as we've seen it time and time again, especially this week.
Certainly. Joy Benedict live down there, Temple and Main, just a couple steps away from City Hall, as we keep an eye on your live shot there. We'll let you gather yourself for a few minutes, check back in a second. And SkyCal on the right side of your screen as well, a bit of a wider bird's eye picture of what's going on down there. But it's important context provided there by Joy in terms of being there from 8:30 in the morning, seeing thousands of people, and tens of thousands, going over 20,000 people, mostly peacefully protesting. And now you see a much smaller number and a smaller group sort of agitating law enforcement to enough of a degree to have that dispersal order, that declaration of an unlawful assembly, and then maintaining our eye on this, because it is certainly visual, it is certainly part of what we are monitoring for you, but it is not the full picture of what's been going on today in particular. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to speak to the fact that these streets earlier today, if you had monitored this downtown LA protest, they were packed with people. You could not make out a space of roadway earlier. So we are talking much less people, a much larger group. I believe that protest maybe ended around 3 p.m. But people, obviously, with that amount of people coming to downtown, there are going to be people that stick around. There are going to be people that linger. And this is definitely a much smaller group. But as Joy had mentioned, it took one gentleman, and I'm not going to say he started it all, but it was one gentleman that felt like was really facing off with law enforcement for so long. And that push and pull between using the gas, smoke, rubber bullets, et cetera. We saw sheriff's deputies, we saw LAPD. You see the mounted unit just at the bottom of your screen. It's just below the lower third there on your screen right now. But on that note, I want to get back to Mark Liu at the desk. Mark, what are you keeping an eye on right now?
Well, we're listening to the radio traffic. It's coming in loud and clear down there. What you are seeing is elements of the LA County Sheriff's Department response team that is working in coordination with the LAPD. Those vehicles that you saw there just a moment ago with SkyCal, those are pretty unique to see in the field. I spoke to LA County Sheriff's headquarters about them because here at the desk, we all kind of scratched our head when we saw them. We were not familiar with those pickup trucks that we saw deputies in the tactical gear there at the bottom of your screen. So I just spoke to LA County Sheriffs. Those are vehicles that are used to transport deputies out of LA County Sheriff's jurisdiction to assist other law enforcement agencies like the LAPD when they're in unified command. You usually don't see them actually at the front line. They're usually used for transport, but in this particular case, due for deputy safety and for visibility, they have them there in order to help deputies protect themselves as they move this skirmish line forward. Now, the second thing that we are hearing also from LA County Sheriff's deputies is this has sort of become a rolling dispersal order in the sense that it is not subject to just one group. They are using bullhorns down there to tell these protesters, this is an unlawful assembly. If you are standing in front of us now, you need to disperse. Now, this is video from just a short time ago of a woman that was taken into custody by LA County Sheriff's deputies. After you see up here, she made contact with one of their horses. Now, they dismounted. They were able to get her into custody, and they took her back towards those vehicles. It didn't appear that she had any injuries, and no other deputies were injured either. But, you know, making contact with sheriff's deputies' horses or any law enforcement horse is considered, it could be considered assault on an officer, so they take that very seriously as well. You can see there she's walking away under her own power. So it's unclear what kind of charge she may be facing, but it is clearly stemming from the contact that she made with that sheriff's deputy, that mounted sheriff's deputy. Now, back on the left side of your screen, we continue to see live pictures from SkyCal at the various places around City Hall that we continue to see protesters a little bit further back from that skirmish line, but that skirmish line continues to try and push protesters to the west. As I had mentioned before, there was that main group where Joy Benedict was doing her live reporting from. That was at Temple and Main, I believe. That group broke up into two groups, one that went south, being monitored by the LAPD, and then this group here we see, which is a lot more violent, that is being dealt with by LA County Sheriff's deputies as part of that sheriff's response team in unified command.
Yeah, and this is, you know, something that law enforcement has been speaking about not only for days, as we have seen protests throughout downtown LA, mostly near the federal building, near City Hall. Many of these protests, that's where they have been centered. But we just heard from the mayor this morning. We heard from LAPD, the sheriff's department. I know I drove through the 101 coming into work, and CHP has the entire 101 entrance exit points through downtown completely blocked off. But this is something that they have been preparing for. And really throughout the day, we were hearing from Unified Command saying, we're not having any issues with protesters. I think their biggest issue was there's just so many people. We couldn't get to people that needed medical help if they needed it. But even then, we haven't heard of, you know, injuries related to the protests necessarily. But right around 4 o'clock, 4:30, things taking a turn when a much smaller group continues to linger in the downtown LA area. And that protest has now ended officially. And law enforcement reiterating, going back to this morning and really for about a week now, about how they will not tolerate violence or anything of the matter right now. As you continue to take a live look at this. On that note, let's get to our Tom Wade, who's one of our crews out there in downtown. Tom, can you hear us? And can you tell us where you are, what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's pretty intense right now. There is tear gas being fired, tear gas canisters. We're moving back up Temple right now. You can see that all on the screen right now. This all just very, very rapid developments right now. We're just standing here and everything seemed pretty, I mean, you could hear the action going on to our east, but it was not as intense as it was. Literally in a few seconds, everything changed. They started firing the tear gas canisters. And everything just changed in a hot second. They are definitely trying to disperse this crowd, and people just went running, and some people were just, you know, walking quickly. They set those off, and that really just changed the entire vibe. It was, like I said, I was kind of up and away from City Hall, like Temple, right next door to the courthouse, and I could hear and see some of the action that was going on with Joy and Zach, but it was a distance away, it felt like, and then all of a sudden the flashbangs went off, the pepper spray, tear gas, whatever you want to call it, that's when they deployed that, and everyone just kind of scattered. So now here we are kind of back up the street. We're close to North Broadway right now. We're on Temple, right near between Spring and North Broadway, and they sort of cleared the scene, but now people seem to be kind of moved back. All right, yeah, we have a lot of intense emotions right now, right? A lot of emotions running high. I'm kind of waiting to see if I can. I haven't felt any of the pepper spray or the tear gas come up. Usually, when there's a breeze, it wafts up, but I think the wind is blowing in the opposite direction. Thankfully for us, so yeah, it does feel like it's kind of blowing it away from us and down to the east. So that's kind of making it a little bit easier to breathe. And I guess now we're just in this holding pattern, and they're sort of methodically, when I say they, police, trying to get everyone out of here, and it seems like there's a much more calm atmosphere now. People are more methodically and kind of more relaxed walking out of the area. Definitely a big change from that very sudden just surge of activity when the canisters were set off and the crowd dispersed. I see more police moving through the area, so it'll be interesting to see now what they do, because there's people in the streets still, and this is an area where I believe that they've declared an unlawful assembly. So yeah, I mean, right now it's just kind of a holding pattern. I think there's some people who have left, and you probably hear some chanting behind me. I haven't seen any confrontations directly between protesters and police from where I'm standing, but you can see the distance there. Look, go back to you guys.
Tom Wade down live in downtown LA right now. Tom, I'll circle back to you. We want to ask you something a little bit later on, but we'll let you gather yourself for a moment, because we want to get to Zach Boetto, who is just south of City Hall.
Not
Zach,
too far from where Tom is.
Yeah, not too far from where Tom is. But Zach, we see the mask on, or what are you seeing right now?
Hey, Gio, we're at City Hall East here, and you talked about those two groups that have split up to Main and Temple. That's one of those groups here. You can see the sheriff's deputies right here talking. These deputies were shooting pepper balls and tear gas into the crowd there. That's one group. And then here to the left is Main and First. This is that second group you talked about, just south of City Hall here as well. And we are in this little staging area right here where some of the media has gathered to be able to be in between. But there's tear gas in the air right now circling. That's why I have the mask on. That's why we have the goggles on. You can see the ralliers and the protesters continuing to approach. As soon as they approach, deputies firing those pepper balls here to our right and pushing them back, pushing them back. Seems like they're trying to hold them right at this line, this south side entrance to Los Angeles City Hall here. And again, deputies then shooting at these protesters who look like they're trying to get from one group to the other. You can see them going to this group here on Main and Temple. But, like we've been talking about over the last, since the top of the hour here, the last 18 minutes, things have definitely escalated. And it's been tear gas, it's been flashbangs, there goes another one, and it's been pepper balls to try to separate these groups that gathered here at the Los Angeles City Hall. So we're seeing a lot of protesters, they get pushed back and they come back to the line. As we said all week and last weekend, these protests, they tend to ebb and flow. So the protesters get pushed back and then they come back on the line. And as soon as they start to make their way back and deputies feel like they've crossed a line, that's when deputies will then, fire those pepper balls and tear gas to, again, try to push them back. But we're seeing really hundreds of people here in this group off of Main and First here to our left. They've got the signs, they've got the flags, they've got all the PPE that you can think of, masks, goggles, and they're here to protest. But again, things turned from that peaceful protest earlier now to a much more action-packed protest and clash between law enforcement and protesters here outside of Los Angeles City Hall. So we're going to continue to, of course, follow what's going on here. We are in a safe zone here between the two groups, but we are seeing now two separate groups split up here outside of LA City Hall, and deputies try to keep them back off of their skirmish lines while we continue, of course, these protests that are all surrounded this No King's Day, and from last weekend was those ICE raid protests, and we're seeing a culmination of those two things now here in June, and it's become this pretty serious clash that we're seeing here in downtown LA, guys.
Zach, before we let you go here, LAPD had put out that some of the protesters were throwing things like objects at them. Are you seeing that currently happening right now?
Yeah, the protesters are throwing things back at deputies, and what's happening also is deputies are shooting tear gas into the crowd, and some protesters are quick enough and are wearing gloves, and they're grabbing the tear gas canisters and throwing them back at the deputies. So that's when you see a lot of those tear gas canisters right next to deputies. You're wondering how they can get so close. If they're the ones shooting them, protesters are picking them up and throwing them right back to where they're standing. Protesters also seeming to have glass bottles, which they're choosing to throw, and here comes more tear gas right here. We're seeing now also a large number of American flags that just popped up here in the area. We're seeing the American flags and the tear gas, quite a contrast right here.
Yeah, that large group looks to have moved in there. I know you guys are moving back here. We want to get to our Mark Lou, but I want to make a point here is that this has now been considered an unlawful assembly, and a dispersal order has now pretty much been ordered, which means that at this point, LAPD or law enforcement can use force because they want people to just leave the area. That's correct, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's exactly right. An unlawful assembly has been declared here. This means that the First Amendment concept of protesting here at this time does not apply because of either issues of violence or, like you said, people doing things that could potentially harm property or lives. I want to go out to Joy Benedict, though, right now. She is down there still near Temple. And Joy, tell us what you're seeing down there.
I mean, it's a little chaotic. I think that's given. A lot of banging going on behind me, as expected in a protest like this. But as you mentioned, yes, I am here at Temple and Main Street. We have a lot of agitators out here on the street. They are refusing to disperse despite the call to do so. And so what you're seeing is a lot of flashbangs. We got some tear gas. We got a few of those rubber bullets going at individuals that they are targeting as they are trying to get the crowd to move out of this area. This is right in between the main City Hall building and the bridge that goes to the East City Hall building, as you can see that and hear that, obviously. We're kind of a little bit back behind the front line, but of course that doesn't mean you can't hear things that are going on as we try to maneuver around our own news van. Clearly, we did not pick the best place to park at 8:30 this morning. But nonetheless, everything is going on right there in the crosswalk. If you can see that up there, you can see a lot of the smoke there. And now it's white smoke right now. The tear gas is going to be the yellow or the green smoke, so that's what you want to look out for. And that's when you'll likely see us heading the opposite directions. But
they attacked us.
They are trying to push everybody back. That's what they're trying to do. Yes, it's definitely a difficult situation. Yes, it's been very peaceful all day long. We should mention that until about 45 minutes or so ago. Oh, where were you when you guys were down at the Federal Building?
Right here on Spring, on Temple, all the way down in that center, right there under the bridge.
Okay, and you got here early this morning?
Early this morning, it was super. It's been peaceful the entire time. They came in with the horses, no warning, tear gas everybody, flashbang everybody, rubber bulleted everybody. That's what started all of this.
And I hear it started with the National Guard, sort of in that direction, or who did you see first?
It was all LAPD, all LAPD.
On the left
got shot by this. We got
That's
shot
right.
this.
That's right.
One of the rubber bullets? Are you okay?
I'm okay, but we saw people get shot.
I saw a guy
It
get
was
hit right
peaceful.
here, right in the
It was all
groin.
peaceful. None of us was violent.
Yeah.
They started this.
No, I've been here since 8:30. It was very peaceful. We do want to make that very clear, and we have a lot of video of that as
Playing
well.
basketball. It was like a good vibe. Like,
It was a
honestly.
good vibe. There was a
very,
lot
very
of
nice.
music. It was kind of like a street party.
And when they decided to come in, they came in super, super hard and aggressive, and that's what's created all of this.
And you didn't get any sort of warning at all.
No warning. They just
How does
masked
this
up.
make you feel right now after you've spent all day here trying to express your opinion
It's
peacefully?
upsetting because how are people supposed to feel like their voices are being heard when they're being violently put down by the state itself? I mean, this is the whole point, right? It's like you can't give people parameters of protesting. It has to be uncomfortable for everybody. Nobody out here wants to be here.
Well, let me ask you before I go, what is it that you want? Why did you come out today?
I think everyone just wants an end of fascism in America right now, and you know, the end of the order that's been creating this since the 60s, since the 50s, since the 30s, right? I mean, every movement that we've ever gotten something out of has happened from this. So this is an important part of the American identity, and I think everyone here just wants to see an equal and free America.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your opinion with us, and of course for being out here. And you're going to hear a lot of that passion from a lot of folks who are out here as we continue to watch everything literally explode right in front of the Los Angeles City Hall, guys. It's just been a very peaceful day that is certainly anything but at this particular hour. I'll send it.
Yeah, Joy, of course, your safety, Gus's safety as well is a priority. So, you know, get yourself in a situation where you feel comfortable and safe. We'll check back in a little bit later on. I mean, you saw the crowd there. We've been talking about ebbs and flows, even going back to last week. And every time you see LAPD or sheriff's deputies, law enforcement push a group out, it almost seems like all of a sudden then, at least from the ground perspective, even more people start coming in once things start to settle down, and then it escalates again and then coming back down. Taking a live look from SkyCal right now, this is sort of a remnant of one particular group walking down the street. I want to bring Mark Liu back in from the desk there. Mark, what are we keeping an eye on for?
Well, you know, I continue to monitor traffic from both the LA County Sheriffs and the LAPD down there. This has sort of settled into a fairly stable situation in terms of movement. Now, it's certainly unstable in terms of the violence that we're seeing down there. We're seeing, of course, like tear gas that we had seen. We'd seen some people throwing things. But in terms of the location, we've seen much less movement in terms of the dispersal of people. So I want to bring you out to my map on my screen, if I can, and show you. This is a map of downtown LA, and I'm going to zoom in to the primary area where all of this is happening. Now, the landmark that I want you to focus on right here, this is City Hall. And what we are seeing is action primarily right here at the intersections of Spring, Main, and Los Angeles. Now, Joy Benedict was reporting from right about here, Zach Bodo right about here, and Tom Waite is over in this area. But the primary concern right here, elements of LA County Sheriffs are engaging with the protesters right there. That skirmish line that we saw, it's right here. The protesters are in this area. There was also a group that I said earlier had gone this direction and down towards Alameda. The LAPD was managing that. But there is also action where Zach is right here and, of course, right in front of LA City Hall as well. So, again, this primary location right there at the location of Temple and Main is where we are seeing all of that action. The other thing that I want to note here as I clear the screens off of my map, the 101 is also an issue of concern. We are seeing elements of LAPD monitor the areas here, 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 and here, because they don't want people going on the freeway. I want to send it right back out now to Zach Boedo, who is down there near City Hall. Zach, what can you tell us what's going on down there on City Hall East?
Guys, we are getting hit with some tear gas right now as we speak. It's coming our way. We had some protesters.
The protesters who were here at Temple and Main started to come at us and behind deputies who were shooting projectiles over at this group here on Main and First. And so then they decided to really start to try to clear everybody from this group from Temple and Main back that direction, which is north. Some of these sheriff's deputies here, you can see from our vantage point right over the shoulders of the sheriff's deputies and protesters trying to egg them on and get them to do stuff. You can see the protesters with umbrellas. They're using those umbrellas as basically shields to try to block the tear gas canisters or those pepper bullets that are being shot out. But now you can also see the two groups kind of starting to go back and forth. People are able to go back and forth almost as they please. When they started to go in larger numbers, that's when deputies start to shoot those tear gas canisters. Now, looking back over here at Temple and Main, we're seeing a lot of protesters start to approach the intersection here. Usually, right around this type of crowd here is when we start to see the tear gas and the pepper bullets and the flashbangs to try to disperse who's gathering up to this skirmish line that you can see over here on the right. We got deputies on top of these sheriff vehicles that have the bars that are on top of them. They're using those as a method to kind of get a visual at the protesters over the skirmish line. But again, as we see the protesters start to pour into this intersection of Main and Temple, this is what it starts to look like right before law enforcement will start to shoot off whether it's tear gas or flashbangs to try to get these groups to disperse. And now let's look back over at the other group over here on our left. Again, starting to crowd up. You can see there's a lot of media up front, up close, trying to get photos of those protesters who are on the front lines, who have been kind of taking those tear gas canisters and those pepper bullets from deputies and basically shaking it off and continuing to push forward toward deputies who are stationed here at East City Hall, as you guys mentioned. So still, an intense situation here outside of Los Angeles City Hall, but we're in one of those moments of lull where there's where you're not hearing any bangs, you're not seeing any flashes, but still over here we're seeing congregations of protesters and deputies who are seeming to be ready to jump into action as soon as they're ready to. You can see here now deputies seemingly preparing to go on an offensive here, and like I said, push these protesters back who are here at Temple and Main. I would not call this a peaceful protest at this point, guys. You mentioned earlier that it was very peaceful here now at 5:30 on Saturday evening here in Los Angeles. These protests are not peaceful. We have tear gas, we have pepper bullets, we have flashbangs, and we have people who are getting seriously hurt. You can see a young man who looks like he is with media, maybe. He's got a mask, he's squinting his eyes. He took some serious tear gas. It's surprising to see this many people still sticking around because of the amount of tear gas that's in the air, the amount of pepper bullets and flashbangs that are being fired by deputies. It seems like a normal family would get out as soon as they hear a flashbang explode right at the intersection they're standing. But these protesters not backing down, and you can see on the ground in this area the debris that has been left behind. Right here I have what looks like a less than lethal ammunition that deputies were using to fire at protesters. It's like a spongy to the touch here, and it won't hurt, but it might be enough to push you back. So guys, we're going to send it back to you in the studio. Again, a very active scene still here in Los Angeles.
And Zach, before we let you go, as we take a live look from SkyCal on the right side of your screen, you see those sheriff's deputies establishing that skirmish line. I know you mentioned that it doesn't look like a peaceful protest right now. We've seen the flags, we've seen the signs, as well as the tear gas and every other form of dispersal to try and get the crowds out. But have you been hearing protesters like yell at law enforcement or otherwise instigate any sort of actions? I'm curious as to how you would describe how else protesters and people gathering down there are acting from your vantage point.
There's been a lot of profanity being yelled at law enforcement. We're hearing over the speaker here to my left that it sounds like they just declared an unlawful assembly here in downtown LA. And so people are now starting to leave in droves. So I don't know if it was the unlawful assembly that was ruled that is now making people leave, but this is the most action that I've seen without shooting tear gas or pepper bullets or flashbangs to get people move today. It sounds like this unlawful assembly is getting people to move away from this intersection of Temple and Main, and so it might be the threat of being arrested, which is finally getting people to move away from City Hall after an intense No King's Day protest here in downtown LA, guys.
Yeah, you know, you're watching that group just basically run the other direction. Zach Boetto, thank you so much. But I think we need to remember, once that unlawful assembly is declared, as Mark told us, First Amendment really goes out the door. That's when LAPD and law enforcement can use less than lethal, can use the tear gas, because this has been declared an unlawful assembly there. I want to get to Tom Waite. Tom, let us know the location you're at. And then we're seeing a lot of police presence moving in here.
Yeah, so Leslie, I'm just going to jump in here. A lot has just happened in the last few seconds. So at Temple and Broadway, and all of a sudden, a convoy of police vans just showed up, and a small army of officers jumped out, and they are now swarming the streets here in this area. They went down kind of close to the area of City Hall, and they are just, sort of blanketing the area. I can hear bangs. I see smoke. I don't know if that's just smoke, or sometimes that's a device they use just to clear the area, or if that's actually pepper spray. But I just saw a bunch of officers with zip ties and less than lethal weapons jump out of their vans and just swarming this area. All of the vehicles arriving here just the past few seconds. So now it'll be interesting to see what's the operation here. What are they doing? So they obviously, with an unlawful assembly, they are trying to clear the crowd out as much as possible. Just where I was standing as the police were rolling in, someone threw a rock at one of the police cars. The police showing pretty good restraint, and as far as I can tell, the officer didn't even didn't pursue this person, and the person basically didn't run away. He had a mask over his face, and he just walked off. And officers just kind of kept their focus on what their apparent mission is right now, which is to clear this area around City Hall and around down toward the east there to the federal complex. They are adding more and more officers as we speak. I can hear more sirens coming to our area. You can hear them blaring. Here they're coming. It's like a convoy here. I think some people are starting to get the message that have been lingering. They're trying to move their cars, but man, they are coming fast and furious right now. Here's another round. Here they come. This guy's gonna get knocked if he doesn't be careful. But they are absolutely in a pretty organized operation mode here. You can tell that they had personnel and people ready to go on the ground, and they're moving quickly. They're swarming the area.
Yeah, Tom, I want to ask you something. If we can, I want to be able to put up SkyCal just a brief moment as we keep talking to Tom here, because there was someone in a vehicle, seemingly unattended, and kind of waving a wheelchair up in the...
I believe he was at kind of the skirmish line where police were for quite some time, and he might have gotten in his own vehicle there and is now leaving the area. But yeah, he was in a wheelchair, and it looked like he was a part of the protest, now leaving that area there.
It was an interesting sight, to say the least. But Tom, I think it's worth going back to your point there about seeing that convoy of vans, of officers, of law enforcement making their way. I'm curious from your perspective as to the number of protesters, because as we start approaching the evening hours, as we've seen in the last week or so, is that once the numbers game starts to tilt toward law enforcement, that's when we start seeing the ramp up of really pushing crowds out once law enforcement feels like they have an upper hand in terms of more of us versus more protesters. And then we start seeing detainments, then we start seeing arrests. I'm curious if you see a significantly larger number of law enforcement versus protesters from where you are right now.
Yeah, I mean, from where I am right now, definitely. Most of the people that were here when I arrived have gone, but I'm a bit to the west of where the highest concentration of people are. So where I am right now, you can see they're lining up. They're kind of staging from where I am. This is where they're sending all their personnel, it looks like, or at least, I mean, there could be several different angles that they're coming at this from. In fact, there are. I can see more officers down in the distance. That angle you're looking at right now is more toward the City Hall area, which the shot you're looking at. And so what they're doing is, it looks like they're lining up here, and I'm imagining in other locations as well. And then they're sending in these large groups of officers. And basically what they do is they send them in. It's kind of like a shock and awe type of situation where they flood the zone. They get they barrel in fast. They kind of startle the crowd. People, it scares people. It's startling. So then they disperse sometimes. times, and they just keep doing this and doing it. It's kind of like it sort of wears people out. Now, of course, there's always going to be people that stick around, and sometimes they're here to just be agitators and not really here to protest, and that's what we've seen in a number of times over the last few nights that I've been down here downtown. So now, Anna, they're moving in right there. You can see the police are now running down into the area, and of course, the idea, I'm sure, for them is to do this in large numbers. It's to show force, but not use force necessarily, but to create the the perception that when you see these officers in riot gear and coming in and making their presence known. Just one other note here, and we've said this over the course of our coverage, but it's interesting coming into downtown because it besides this, I don't know how many blocks it is, 5-6 block area, maybe a little bit larger, smaller, give or take. Downtown is quiet. There's nothing really. I mean, it's all of this that I can tell is all taking place around City Hall and near the Federal Building, which is all kind of in the same spot. If you go to any other part of downtown right now, it's generally like business as usual. You wouldn't even know that there are protests and some of these clashes that are playing out here in downtown LA.
Yeah, if you're near LA Live, you would have no idea this was happening. Even driving down the 101, I could not make out the amount of people that were still on the street because the roadways are so clear. Although you do see the show of force as they have all the entrance and exits blocked off there. But Tom, I was just reading from LAPD that they're saying that some people may be throwing commercial grade fireworks at officers, throwing bottles at officers. Are you seeing any of that from your vantage point?
So when I was standing here about 5 minutes ago, there was a man in a mask who threw a rock at a police cruiser. The officer driving it did not even react. He got out of his car's SUV and proceeded down to the east to the area where a lot of these protesters are still in a crowd. That's the only one I've seen over the course of the past 2 days covering this in the early Monday and Tuesday night, and also back on Friday when this all began a week ago Friday. I did see people firing fireworks at the officers and throwing other projectiles, but at this moment that was one person that did it, and then that's all I've seen from this vantage point. But I am a little bit further back, so I think some of the other protesters down further away, there could be other stuff playing out there. What sort of boggles my mind is there's still people driving down into this area, and it's completely congested and kind of locked down. So I'm surprised that I don't know if some people are just like caught up in not knowing this is happening. Like I said, you could be 2 blocks away from here and have no idea this is even happening. Because when we came off the freeway, it was, I could see a bunch of action going on down. I think you can probably see down there to our east. They're flooding the zone over there. I don't know if one of our other cameras has a better shot of that, but it looks like there's a huge show of force there from, and what we're showing it to you here. But bunch of police officers down there, and I just heard another banging sound, and I don't know where it came from. But yeah, this block right here is a pretty good vantage point, but it's also much more quiet up here. There's obviously people honking their horns and that, but quiet in terms of there's no real confrontation here. It looks like police are focusing a lot of that down now. They've moved people out, and they're sort of more to the east of where we are. Like I said, we're on Temple right now, just to the east of North Broadway.
Tom Wade down there live. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate that, and getting to see that perspective of really crowded traffic, not to mention an overload of officers, really.
Oh, yeah. It feels like that entire intersection, right, is just officers at this point. Besides, what is pretty surprising is how many cars are still driving in that area.
Yeah.
Law enforcement has said, try to stay away. Well, they're saying stay away from the Civic Center area of downtown LA, and that's pretty much just City Hall, the Federal Building, and right around there. Exactly.
It goes back to your point and Tom's point as well about the fact that you could be a couple blocks away and not even know that this is going on because it's so heavily concentrated in just a little bit. But on that note, in terms of contrast, we want to get back out to our Zach Boetto, who is near City Hall, because from Tom's perspective, Zach, we were seeing a lot of officers. From your perspective earlier, it was a lot of protesters, but now it looks like there might be a movement of officers behind you. Describe the scene for us.
Well, Gio, lots of Los Angeles Metro Police now moving down Main Street toward First. You can see them right behind Los Angeles City Hall. They are moving by the dozens here down Main Street, going west. It looks like officers with weapons. You have officers here on top of their horses. Again, these are Los Angeles Metro Police officers who are now taking over Main Street between Temple and First. It sounds like over on Spring Street, there are more flashbangs going off, but if you can step this way, on top of the right here, step to your right, I'm talking to Assad, our photographer here, you can see that officers are pushing toward protesters there near First Street. They're really trying to get them off of Main here and back towards First Street. But this street over the last 15 minutes was pretty much taken over by protesters. Now Los Angeles Metro Police pushing back, looking like they're pushing them all the way back to First. We just saw Joy Benedict. She was all the way up here where we are at Main and Temple, and she is a part of that group that just went that way. So you might be able to see from her vantage point what's happening in that direction, guys. But it's clearing up over here at Temple and Main.
A big show of force from the LAPD there on the ground. As you can see, officers pretty much just sweep this entire area that you made note of, Gio. Earlier when we spoke to Zach, it was a lot of protesters, and now you can see LAPD's mounted unit is out there. They have that show of force of officers, and they're quickly pushing this crowd back.
Yeah. And speaking of, we want to highlight that contrast once again. We get back out to our Joy Benedict. Joy, earlier you were talking to a couple protesters who were there, and they were saying that they started this. They were blaming law enforcement, that they got no warning. I mean, where are you right now? It looks like you're in the van, but who have you been talking to, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, we are in the van because if you look in front of us, you were just talking about where Zach was. And so, see, they pushed all the horses here. We didn't have anywhere to go, so we just jumped in our van and watched the horses in the crowd move past us. But it looks like we can get out of the van now. But we just had a little bit of a crunch moment. So you can see we still have, it appears to be LAPD there in the blue. That's moving out. And if we open up the van, you'll see that now the horses and all of the command is actually over here behind us. Sorry, we're obviously moving and live on TV at the same time. So you see now the horses are on the other side of us, and we were rolling as they kind of surrounded our car and kept going that way as they're trying to push the crowd. Now that is towards the Los Angeles Police Department. So they have now moved them from the federal building past Temple, down Main further as they're heading over there to First Street as they're trying to get this crowd and specifically the agitators sort of corralled into an area or quite frankly pushed out of downtown altogether. But knowing what I do about downtown, they're not going to want to push them further too far in that direction because then they're going to hit a business district, and they of course don't want to send the agitators into the restaurant corridor and things of that nature. So I can bet that they're going to try and contain them at some point for those who continue not to disperse as they have been asked to do. But it has really just been going on for maybe about an hour and a half now that we've been seeing this sort of agitation and this exchange between law enforcement and the rebel rousers, so to speak. But as I have been reiterating for the last hour, I want to make sure you guys understand that we had like 8 hours of a very peaceful and very powerful protest. I think it's also important to mention because a lot of people keep thinking this is happening all over LA. It is not happening all over LA. It is happening right here in this downtown area where you're dealing with the federal building and City Hall, and unfortunately some of that has spilled into Little Tokyo, which is of course the closest neighborhood nearby. And when I was out there earlier today, every shop was boarded up. There were only about 2 places that were even open during the lunch hour because they didn't want to draw the crowds, and they were quite frankly afraid that this was going to happen and it was going to end up once again on their doorstep after a very tough week that many of the businesses here in this area have already had. But yes, so you can see the mounted unit, the LAPD, everybody is sort of moving in this direction, which is west towards more of the center of downtown. And that's why I caution, I can't imagine they're going to let this crowd get too far west, because then they're going to enter sort of another business district where there's a lot of restaurants and nightlife here in this community. But again, as we've been talking about, they did say this is an area of dispersal. We've got the chopper up. They're trying to get this crowd to do just that. They're trying to get them to simply disperse, and so hopefully they'll get the message, if not for the movement, but for all the activity and the horses, to get them to get out of the way. I'll send it back to you guys.
Joy, thank you so much. I want to get to Mark Liu to give us some perspective, because Joy made a good point here. They are moving this crowd west. If you keep going that way past First Street, you are going to hit a pretty busy business district with a lot of restaurants, a lot of shops. Do we think LAPD is staged on in the other direction as well? Are you seeing any of that? Or
yes, they are already concerned about groups to the south and to the west on 2nd Street, on Broadway, south of Grand Park. This is a concern. Now, what we're looking at here is the western side of City Hall. Joy is literally on almost exactly on the other side of City Hall. You see that bridge that connects the main building of City Hall to that large white building on the right side of your screen? That's City Hall East. Yeah. Joy and Zach are basically right there in that area, and that's where we have seen a large number of LAPD on mounted units moving that group to the south. That was a troublesome group for LAPD, and you can see they are now here on 1st Street and Main, where there are groups that are running through here. So what we are seeing is action on both sides of LA City Hall. It is much more intense here on the southeast side of City Hall, as opposed to the western side. That's close to where Tom Waite was. And we saw that large group between City Hall and Grand Park. They appear to be much more peaceful than this group here, who is continuously being moved to the south by LAPD mounted units with the assistance of some LA County Sheriff's deputies that are behind them there. But it's unclear the final destination for LAPD as they continue to move to the south. There's a lot of downtown ahead of them. So they're hoping, I believe, LAPD listening to the radio traffic, it appears they are hoping that as this group continues to move south, they will get further and further away from the point of origin where this unlawful assembly dispersal order was declared. And we have seen historically, as protesters move further and further away from where they originally were from, there's a much higher likelihood that they will disperse because protesters need to get back to their cars, they need to get back to their homes. So we will see these large chunks, these large groupings sort of move away and disperse. Now, this group here to the western side of City Hall has essentially been here since about 9:45 this morning. And what we are seeing here, Gio and Leslie, is perhaps the beginnings of almost the exact same thing we saw, I believe it was Monday night into Tuesday, where protesters last week grabbed large barricades, including large orange and red metal chairs from the Grand Park area, and placed them right there on Spring Street and barricaded the LAPD. This was almost exactly, I guess it was 6 days ago, 5 days ago, that we saw an identical skirmish line with protesters right here. There was tear gas deployed back then, too, as these protesters grabbed items from Grand Park. They were benches, they were metal barricades like we're seeing there, and set them up in almost the exact same place as we're seeing right here, right now. So we're going to keep monitoring this. There are several different groups moving around downtown, around City Hall, and here at the desk, I'm going to keep listening to the radio traffic. I'm going to come right back to you in just a second.
Mark, thank you. We even saw that going back to the weekend as well, as laying those barriers down.
And luckily, we're not seeing any of those pink benches. Not sure if they're still even at the Gloria Molina Grand Park anymore, but you are seeing that group. It's just 3 people take, these metal gates, push them forward, try to hide behind them. And that's the situation that once that dispersal order is called, law enforcement will really try to break up. But it was interesting, on the other side of City Hall, as Mark was talking, did you see how quickly law enforcement is moving
almost like a burst, they were coming right on through.
Yeah, it looked like some of those officers, they take the lead, they start to clear the intersection, and they are just running towards anyone in their direction, whether they move or not. to clear
Right.
the next area to try to get them to push back.
And even this group right here, there is I hesitate almost to call it a healthy distance, but there is a distance between protesters and that row of law enforcement. Do we want to get back out to Zach Boetto right now? I know we were just about to check in with him. Zach's still down there live right now. Zach, last we checked, we saw officers sort of push through and get the crowd out. What are you seeing right now?
Hey guys, we're on Temple and Spring now. You can see roughly 100 Los Angeles Police Department officers standing firm here at Spring and Temple, trying to push protesters now west down Spring Street. You can see there's a lot of protesters now here clashing with police officers, which we didn't see. We didn't see a lot of police officers until about 10-15 minutes ago. They are now trying to clear this next wave of protesters down Spring Street. If you look to my right here, you can see those LA County Sheriff's deputies now have jumped on these sheriff pickup trucks, and they have also rolled up Temple Street, which is now completely filled with law enforcement all the way down past Main Street, right? So from Main to Spring, on Temple, we now have a bunch of law enforcement who are coming up and then trying to push protesters west down Spring Street, which is right in front of the Los Angeles City Hall. Also, if you look left here towards City Hall, you can see sheriff's deputies and standing guard right on City Hall, where we're pointing in this direction, kind of protecting City Hall there. And as you look a little bit to the right, you can see protesters pushing the line, pushing the line, pushing the line here, trying to get as close to officers and deputies as they can. But we're seeing, if we go back to the right, again, a large growth of law enforcement officers here at the corner of Temple and Spring, looking like they're going to make another push west on Spring to try to get protesters away from City Hall here, move them west and also move them north. But you can see the sheriff's deputy vehicles coming around and coming behind the Los Angeles police officers to kind of get their back, get their six, as they might say, and help them push from behind. Again, those deputies standing on top of the pickup trucks have a line of sight. Some of those deputies have those cannon-looking weapons that shoot, as we know, flashbangs and tear gas. And now we're hearing deputies come over the loudspeaker. I can't necessarily pick up what they're saying. But they look like they're again moving. Guys, we're going to send it back to you.
It sounds like, from what I picked up, possibly saying it's an unlawful assembly there, that you have to clear that area. Now, Zach, I know yesterday you covered some of the Marines that were over in Westwood at that federal building. We're seeing a lot of LAPD sheriffs. We know you're not at the federal building there downtown. You're near City Hall. But have you seen any of the federal officials out there today?
We did see National Guard stationed right around the federal building, which is just down Temple Street here. But as we've moved up Temple, you can see here come more officers moving right behind us down Temple. As we've come up Temple, we haven't seen any National Guard here around City Hall. Again, we did see National Guard guardsmen standing around the federal building, but it looks like law enforcement is trying to push protesters away from that federal building up here towards City Hall. They've moved them, and now it looks like they're trying to move them away from City Hall. And right here you can see my photographer Assad here is picking up the line switch. It looks like LAPD is now falling back, and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is now stepping forward to form its own skirmish line here at Spring and Temple. They're obviously well protected. Helmets, visors, you know, bulletproof vests on them. But you have now these two organizations working together, which, you know, as you know, Mayor Karen Bass and Sheriff Robert Luna said they did not want to help with these federal sweeps that were taking place with the Department of Homeland Security, but they said they will protect the city if these protests turn violent. Mayor Karen Bass all day preaching, we want you to be able to peacefully protest here in the city, We want you to be able to express your First Amendment right, but we don't want this to turn violent. And here we go with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies who are on scene, who are helping to protect this area of downtown LA. And we also have the Los Angeles Police Department also helping the deputies do that same thing, guys.
Zach Bodo live near City Hall down there. Zach, thank you. You really saw law enforcement seem to really beef up their operations in just the last really half hour. Even in just the last few minutes, you can really highlight all of that as an unlawful assembly you picked up there through the loudspeakers being declared in that area. So we're going to obviously continue to monitor the situation here. And on that note, we want to welcome in our CBS viewers back here as we approach the 6 o'clock hour. A lot going on in downtown LA following the aftermath of those No Kings protests, not just in Southern California, but across the country. Obviously, the majority of those protests, if not outright all of them, being mostly peaceful. We saw a lot of large crowds everywhere, including downtown LA. And now things have taken a bit of a turn as we continue to monitor the situation with LAPD, LA County Sheriff's deputies as well, sort of move out these crowds of people near City Hall after an unlawful assembly has been declared.
Yeah, right around 4:30, LAPD started declaring an unlawful assembly in certain areas of the Civic Center area of downtown. So this is largely concentrated near City Hall. What you're looking at right now, SkyCal, over City Hall, that is the entrance there, but you can see some people pushing back some of these metal barricades. We've seen law enforcement use not only flashbangs as well as tear gas and some of those less than lethal rounds to get this crowd back. It's a much smaller crowd earlier today, 25,000 people, if not more, but take a look. You're seeing some of that less than lethal being deployed there. I want to get to Mark Liu here. Mark, what are you hearing on the ground? This is a scene we've seen play out for the last maybe hour now, hour and a half.
Yeah, so we are basically, as you said, they're deploying some less than lethal rounds here, both with those flashbangs and tear gas. But our Zach Boedo is actually down there on the ground, and I want to go right to him. Zach, can you see what's happening there by City Hall?
Yeah, as we were talking about a few moments ago, guys, deputies have taken over here at Spring and Temple, and they are not here to mess around. They immediately held firm here at Temple and Spring, and now they've gotten their flashbangs out, and they're shooting them right at protesters who are here in front of City Hall, as the Los Angeles Police Department has now started to fall back. We still have some police officers right here on this line in this, dirt terrain with the plants here, but other than that, the police officers have fallen back. You can see sheriff's deputies, here we go again, throwing more less than lethals, going over the top of the protesters. You can see some of the protesters, this girl in the red dress here, who has her hands up. She really seemingly, she's crying and pleading with officers. She doesn't want to be involved in the violence, clearly, but there are other protesters who are masked up and who are welcoming these types of confrontations. Here go the deputies, tear gas. You can see the smoke actually coming back toward us, so we're downwind, not exactly where you want to be when these types of tear gas canisters go off, or these flashbangs, but you can see the protesters are starting to disperse, so this is what they feel like works. The flashbangs, the tear gas, and they are clearing protesters off of Spring Street, which is the street that runs right in front of Los Angeles City Hall, where we saw thousands of ralliers and protesters earlier today. But once this turned what you can consider non-peaceful, they're now trying to clear people out. An unlawful assembly has been declared, and they are trying to get people to disperse from outside of the Los Angeles City Hall. So again, we have dozens, if not hundreds, of Los Angeles Police Department officers here on scene, and also Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies working in unison to get these protesters back. It looks like there's a couple deputies down, maybe reloading, but the tear gas is coming right at us, guys. I got to throw my goggles and mask back on. We're going to send it back to you.
Zach Boeto live down there near City Hall. Zach, thank you. And seeing swift movement in that regard, trying to push the crowds out. Let's get over to Tom Waite really quickly here. Because, Tom, earlier when we last checked in with you, we saw that heavy confluence of officers. Is there still a large presence around you, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I am in Gloria Molina Plaza right now. This is just, we're off Broadway, and I think we're looking at a different angle of what Zach was seeing, where you're seeing the crowd sort of dispersing. We hear all those flashbangs. We see some of that, what looked like tear gas. I don't know if it was smoke or tear gas. Yeah, we can see. Now, those are fireworks, I think. That might be from the crowd. We saw a lot of that last week, which you can see people are now moving, and obviously that sound can scare a lot of people because you might think it's a gunshot. But yeah, you can see people are moving up and out of the area through the plaza here, and I think this is obviously very deliberate to get people to move this way to the north, because it allows people to go in a direction that's not, sort of a commercial district, to get the crowd to disperse in a way that doesn't disrupt other districts of the city. Like we've been talking about, this really is confined to one very tight little area in the city, in the downtown area. A lot of government buildings and things like that. So yeah, right now it's a pretty orderly dispersal. Just like a pretty orderly dispersal of people as they kind of move out of this area. Obviously, there's still a lot of people lingering, but the sort of methodical tactics by police to get people to move out and thin out the crowd seems to be fairly effective. Although there is still a lot of, there are a lot of people here, but there's not nearly the sheer numbers that we've seen. I don't think those are, I believe, are fireworks. And the more that happens, the more there is a response from police and deputies.
Tom, now law enforcement has said they have seen some of those fireworks, but I believe what we're seeing, because we're seeing it from SkyCal, is law enforcement using maybe those less than lethals, right, as well as those smoke bombs. They're kind of making that flash that look like a firework. But law enforcement has said that officers have taken some commercial-grade fireworks thrown at them. They say crowds are throwing rocks, bottles, different things at law enforcement currently at this hour.
And that's something that, even going back to earlier today and going over the past week or so, is something law enforcement has repeated incessantly, that's something they're not going to tolerate. Hence why you see the actions that they're taking in order to disperse these crowds. And Tom, even from our vantage point from SkyCal, right there near the park, you see people just kind of scattering all over. And as we inch closer and closer to this curfew at 8 o'clock, this is really sort of when things start to, I guess for lack of a better word, tighten up, where you have law enforcement doing their sweeps and more aggressively pushing people out, and at the same time you have folks kind of scattering all over the place, again in this very concentrated area right around downtown.
Sorry, are you talking to me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was less of a question, more of an observation, and throwing it to you because you're able to see things at least from a little bit different perspective on the ground.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I'm just sort of like focused too on what's going on here. It's very interesting to see. Oh wow. Okay, wait, Anna, that's all happening right there. Okay. Oh, you see. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we're just on the other side of where Zach is, and from this angle, it just looks like they're moving more and more people out, and then putting barriers up, and again, a very methodical tactic that they've used any number of times. And right now, I don't know, some of these barriers, it looks like some of the protesters or people in the crowd are now taking these barriers and moving them into the middle of Gloria Molina Plaza here. So I don't know what police will do now, but you can see there are many officers and deputies in this area, and they continue to add more and more numbers. They're just flooding the zone, and they'll continue to do that, as I think, Gio, you were talking about, maybe Zach as well, as we push toward the curfew hour. There are a number of people here that are just kind of like lingering and curious and watching, but then you see the actions taken with the flashbangs and whatever other devices they're using, whether it's smoke or pepper spray or tear gas, and then of course that tends to disperse the crowd even further. Now again, we're seeing these barriers being moved around. I don't know if that's going to provoke a law enforcement response. It certainly isn't going to stop them. These barriers are are pretty easy to move. But what will scare people here is everyone's kind of standing around, and what will happen is police will barrel in at lightning speed, and it will scare a lot of people, and people will go running. That's how this always plays out. People are standing here, they've been told to leave, they're not, and then what will happen is police will storm in, and it will provoke usually a pretty intense surge from the crowd. But the numbers of people here much fewer than there were just a short time ago, and so these tactics that police are using are, they seem to be working to a certain extent.
Yeah, they have been very effective. Tom Wade, thank you so much. And of course, you have to remember, even though we're 2 hours from curfew, it is that unlawful assembly that was or has been ordered in different parts of the Civic Center of downtown LA. Mark called them pretty much like rolling dispersal orders. So wherever law enforcement is going, they pretty much are telling the crowds, hey, if you're standing in front of us, this is an unlawful assembly. This is a dispersal order, which means we can use less than lethal tactics to get you out of here.
Yeah, that's right. And so what we're seeing here is, as you mentioned, that rolling dispersal order, because this is where the First Amendment expression, the freedom of speech expression, comes to an end after an assembly has been declared unlawful. And that could be for several different reasons. Usually the two primary reasons are there's some kind of physical violence or there's property damage. Those are the two primary reasons why any law enforcement agency in Southern California would have reason to declare an unlawful assembly. The other times that we have seen unlawful assemblies declared is when groups of protesters enter extremely dangerous areas, like, say, for instance, freeways, like we've seen the 101 or the 110 freeway, or train tracks also are an issue. Another issue is the possibility of protesters entering government buildings or very important buildings such as like the airport. If we ever saw protesters going into the airport like LAX or Burbank Airport, that would usually be declared an unlawful assembly, as because of the civic disruption there happening would just be too extreme. And of course, entering places like City Hall or entering places like federal property, that could be an automatic unlawful assembly as well. Now, if you come out to my screen, I'm going to give you sort of a tactical idea of where this is happening. What we're seeing here is downtown LA. First, I'll zoom out. This will give you a bird's eye view. Let's go right in here to City Hall, where we have seen most of the action earlier took place here along Temple Street. This is where we saw LA County Sheriff's deputies deploy tear gas here and here. Now, since then, we have seen the protesters being pushed on both sides of City Hall. The one on the east side made it all the way down here. LAPD formed a skirmish line right there, but there was a very large group of protesters. That's what we have been seeing for about the last 20 minutes, going in this direction through Gloria Molina Grand Park and south on Spring. Now, it's these protesters that they are mostly concerned with, because this group is very large, and it's unclear right now which direction they hope these protesters ultimately will go in. If they head in this direction, they're going to head towards the financial district. If they head in this direction, they're going to head towards the commercial district. But it appears LAPD and LA County sheriffs are hoping that they do go to the south. Why? There are less government buildings in that direction. Most of the government buildings are here in the northeast part of downtown LA, and they are particularly concerned about issues regarding the National Guard and anything else that is happening in the northeast corner. Of course, we also have this issue, which is the 101 freeway, and they definitely don't want people going on the 101. So we have seen LAPD and LA County sheriffs all along these off-ramps here and on-ramps blocking exits there. So right now, what we're seeing here in the lower left-hand portion of your screen, if we can go to that full, these are LA County sheriff's deputies from that sheriff's response team. They are assisting LAPD with their tactical gear, and it's this kind of action that we are probably going to see for the next 30 or 40 minutes. These skirmish lines, flashbangs, and tear gas as protesters refuse to disperse. There are continuous announcements over loudspeakers that say this is an unlawful assembly, you must leave the area. They always want to provide exit routes for these protesters to leave. Very likely that is to the south, possibly to the west, but going north into the east back towards City Hall is not going to be an option for anyone who wants to leave this afternoon. And
that's the moment. As you're speaking here, Mark, they are pushing forward there towards the protesters that do remain right in front of City Hall, using more, some of those less than lethals right there. And I'm sure some of those flashbangs as well we're seeing shot into the sky there.
Right, and you know, we do want to get out to our Joy Benedict at some point here in the next few seconds, where I think it's important to note as we throw to Joy that, you know, she's been down there since 8:30 in the morning and has made repeated notes and important notes that this has not been the scene all day, that it's been mostly peaceful protests up until things started to take this turn. But Joy, I think that's worth repeating here, right? Because you've seen it front and center all day.
Absolutely. I mean, we had 8 hours of a very calm, peaceful demonstration by tens of thousands of people who were here downtown. I want to show you where we are right now, though. We are in front of City Hall, as many people are, but we're on the opposite side. You can still see a little bit of that lingering smoke over there. That's where we just saw the smoke bombs, I guess you could call them, or the smoke gas that had gone into the air there to try and disperse that crowd. And so we did see a few people now heading this direction, but this particular corner has already been cleared. If you look around, you see that they have quite a presence in front of the Los Angeles Police Department. It's been there all day. The street has also been blocked off for most of the day, as they didn't want the demonstrators, even the peaceful ones earlier today, coming in this direction. But as we talk about what a really pleasant day it was for peaceful protesting, I want to toss to the story that we put together earlier today to just show you the crowd that really made this day something to remember. It was an incredible show of solidarity. A dance for democracy as tens of thousands of people descended on downtown, marching from the steps of City Hall.
United will never be divided!
With one similar voice.
The alarm clock of fascism rings, and we got to be there to wake up and answer it.
It's the No Kings National Day of Defiance that brought more than 20,000 people to the streets, many chanting words we can't share, holding signs we won't show you. But that doesn't mean you can't read between the lines.
We're not going to kneel over and take this stuff. This is what defines us as a generation, as a people.
As most here are upset about President Trump and his policies, challenging what they hold dear.
Most immediately is the federal thugs who are coming in and ripping people off of the street.
After more than a week of raids and detentions involving Los Angeles' immigrant community, many here have simply had enough.
We all come from immigrants, especially our friends and family are surrounding us right now, and so we just want to show support.
A heavy military and police presence was clear on every corner, unnerving for some in its appearance, and more so in concept.
We've got the National Guard at the VA, right? We've got military here. It's clearly an antagonizing tactic.
From a Republican Party known for states' rights, many here feel that doesn't seem to apply to this state.
The hypocrisy of it just makes your head explode. It just makes your head explode.
They're always going to target California as being like this blue or like this very hyper-liberal bastion that doesn't represent the rest of American values, but California values are American values. The values of equality, the values of standing up for your neighbor. I think that's what this is all about.
But somewhere in between the political posturing and legal maneuvers of leaders stands this city and those simply willing to keep marching and shouting for their rights and the nation that they love.
They can have their Twitter fights, but these people are in the streets. These are people getting tear gassed, and these are the people getting arrested.
I grew up in America, and I want America. I want America back.
And that's really what so many people were saying here, is that they want the democracy that they have known to come and love to return to this particular city. Now, taking another live look out there, what you see over there in the distance about a block or so away, that is the mounted unit. Now, you may recall maybe an hour or so ago, they were pushing the crowd in that direction down Main Street. We were concerned about it because that is where, in fact, there's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of restaurants in that direction, and you can bet they are trying to now get those people to come back into a different area, as this is just basically a game of chess, right? You have these agitators that have continued to stay despite the fact that this protest ended many, many hours ago, and you have the police department trying to disperse them, and so it's a game of chess going back and forth. Yes. Oh my goodness. Did you get some of the chemical? Yeah, so did we. Hang in there. Go home. Be safe.
I just feel like they should let more people know. I mean,
yes, no, we've been talking about it. You guys hang in there. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry you went through that. Hang in there. And so you can hear a lot of that, as a lot of people who have still stayed down here did have to deal with those chemical irritants as they were putting them out into the crowds, trying to get the crowd to move. But again, it is an unlawful assembly. If you do not need to be downtown, it is time to go home. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, that is what law enforcement is asking people to just leave this area now that it is an unlawful assembly. Joy Benedict, thank you so much. As she mentioned, she's been there since 8:30. You just heard from a host of people that were peacefully protesting for hours during this No Kings protest. 2,000 of these happening nationally, many of them happening in our very own communities, all the way down to South Orange County, up to Ventura County. And at some point, this downtown area near City Hall, right around 4:30, Gio, it took a turn.
Yeah, and
law enforcement started moving in, using their tactics, and then they were saying that some of these protesters were using things like rocks, glass, fireworks to throw at law enforcement.
And at some point, you know, we have seen the movement of law enforcement sort of, you know, go in these flows of sudden bursts, you know, using those less than lethals and pushing the crowds out. And we've seen that actually work to, say, pretty successfully now, especially as you get those crowds moving. People have, you know, sort of scattered all over the place, and now you see a heavy contingent of law enforcement all over the place. On that, we want to get to our Tom Wade, who's down there in downtown LA, and it looks like you're still in the park there. Tom, what are you seeing right now?
So we are just in front of City Hall by North Broadway, and you can see the plaza just in front of City Hall, which is Gloria Molina Plaza, is much emptier than it was before, and you can see a very large police presence right outside of City Hall. It's now the barriers that are down there, those were moved by people in the crowd, so it's not clear what the purpose of that was, or, you know, if someone was going to move them again. But police do appear ready to move further into the park, and they're also right behind us as well. Not nearly as many, but there are officers that are just behind us, just on the stairs as you go up to the north, toward, I think, Dorothy Chandler Pavilion's up there, but that's kind of that direction over that you're looking at right now. But City Hall is the area here. This was, as Leslie and Gio, you were just saying, just a short time ago, the scene of a lot of, you know, loud confrontations between police and the protesters that are lingering here. You saw flashbangs going off, less than lethal tools being used. I also saw some fireworks being shot from the crowd as well. And so there's just a mix of a lot of different sort of chaotic things that were happening all at once. But right now, a lull in the action, and that is likely because police may be bringing in more people to flush more and more people out of this area to completely break up this crowd, and they've been doing that pretty methodically. Again, all of this happening in just a few blocks of a corner of a pocket of downtown LA. If you walk anywhere 2-3 blocks from here, you would have no idea any of this is even happening. It's very remarkable. Lots of drama here, but if you go pretty much anywhere else in LA outside this, I don't know, 7-8 blocks, 6-7-8 blocks, you would not know there's you know, this sort of chaotic scene playing out.
Yeah, Tom, it looks like so much more law enforcement at this hour where you are than protesters. It looks like they've now been pushed outside of Grand Park there. And you're right, this is that ebb and flow we continue to see. Things heighten, and then all of a sudden for some minutes they will quiet down for just a bit. And that's just kind of what we've seen the last few days, really. And
let's get back out to our Zach Boetto, who's also not too far from Tom, giving us a different perspective of things. You see the sheriff's deputies behind you, Zach. What else are you seeing?
Well, Gio, Leslie, for people who don't know this area, we're on the steps of City Hall, and Tom Waite is just over here to our left at Gloria Molina Grand Park. That's where he was just talking to you from. You can see sheriff's deputies and LAPD officers trying to get protesters back that way. But if you look in the distance, as Tom mentioned, there are LAPD officers also on the steps there behind Broadway, looking like they're starting to block protesters in Gloria Molina Grand Park. And this is really interesting because Mayor Karen Bass was here with lawmakers, local lawmakers, this week here at City Hall and at Gloria Molina Grand Park, telling people to peacefully protest. They don't want things to turn violent. Yet here we are, and the peaceful protests have turned less than such, and now it looks like deputies and police officers are starting to block in protesters at Gloria Molina Grand Park. If we turn here to our left, you can see LA Sheriff's deputies again here on Spring Street pushing protesters toward First Street. But here's the thing, there's LAPD officers on First Street now trying to push protesters back here on Spring toward Temple. So they're starting to push the protesters back in. Again, we know this is an unlawful assembly. They've ordered these people to disperse, but they have not. We have sheriff's deputies here with us on the LA City Council, LA City Hall steps. And then over here to our left, there's more deputies and more LAPD officers looking over those protesters as well. But here in the last 15 minutes, I've started to notice that law enforcement officers are now encircling this group of protesters, and it looks like they're, here we go, moving in again. Here comes some more less than lethals. I'll just let the gnat sound kind of take over here. Just listen to this. And now we're seeing protesters run up Gloria Molina Grand Park past this green building here at the park, and they're kind of running back toward that corner. You can see them under the trees there, and I'm not sure if they're able to get past officers who are standing there on Broadway, but it looks like they're trying to go that direction and try to get out of the area now that deputies again are firing some of these flashbangs to try to push them down Spring Street. They're going west down Spring Street. We still have protesters who are deciding to hang out here at Gloria Molina Grand Park, but law enforcement is trying to now move these protesters. There's a lot of graffiti all over the park here, this Gloria Molina Grand Park, which has just recently been upgraded here, and now there's graffiti all over it, all over City Hall here in LA, and there are stickers and posters and deputies, again, using those less lethals, pushing protesters down Spring towards First Street. Guys, and really, it's continued to be a hectic scene as we talked about the ebbs and flows here for this No King's Day rally, which turned into a peaceful protest, which has now turned into a protest that has fireworks, has tear gas, has flashbangs, and those pepper balls that are being shot at protesters, guys.
Yeah. Zach, yeah, this is a repeated cycle we're seeing right now through the streets of near City Hall. Is that, if you heard while Zach was speaking, there was that unlawful assembly being declared. The speaker, you could hear them, law enforcement declaring that, and then the moment that ends, they then start to move in, they deploy the less than lethal, they deploy the gases as well, and then they clear that area and continue to move forward.
You're starting to see fewer and fewer protesters just sort of scattered around based on our live shots, and a lot more officers on the left side of your screen as well as the right side of your screen. When we want to check back in with Joy Benedict, who's not too far from where Zach is, from where Tom is. You know, we're all monitoring the situation down there.
I'm here whenever.
In downtown. Joy, what are you seeing right now?
Well, as you saw, all the protesters were pushed from that side of the park over to this side. This is right in front of the Los Angeles Police Department on Main and First Street. What they are doing is they're trying to corral them here in the middle, and they're about to start detaining them. We saw the Los Angeles Police Department show up, and with dozens of people. They have basically, you know, the plastic zip ties that they use to detain people, and I can bet you that's what they're about to do over here on this corner. This is Spring and First Street is where we're walking towards. And so at this point, they have basically all four corners of the intersection roped off to people. And so you can tell that they're going to start detaining people here in this area. So that's what they're about to start doing. They're trying to prevent more protesters from coming into this intersection so that they can, in fact, detain them. This has been declared an unlawful assembly. It was declared an unlawful assembly quite a while ago. And so they have been slowly moving the protesters into the same location in hopes of being able to detain them and get those who aren't dispersed into custody of some kind. Now, if you look over there, you can see some folks are trying to hop that fence You see they're trying to hop that fence into that area that's been fenced off for quite some time. So they're trying to do that to try and escape everything that is going on right here, as they obviously don't want to be arrested or even detained for that matter. But this is all just the Los Angeles Police Department, as we've been talking about, playing this game of chess as they're trying to alienate the agitators, the ones that sometimes come here strictly to get arrested, away from the protesters who continue to be lingering behind what was a very peaceful day. So you do have a few of those, and then you have the agitators. It's the agitators that they're trying to arrest, the ones that are throwing things at the officers, that have come here simply to be difficult. And we know who they are, and I think that's I can make that assumption very clearly by some of the actions that you've seen. They've come with that stuff. If you look over to the right-hand side, they're trying to get us to push back a little bit. If you look over to the right-hand side, that's where the Sheriff's Department is. So they're asking us all to stay back a little bit. Obviously, it's hard for the police department when you have this many people to determine who's the media, who's not the media. So we're all just going to hang back a little bit and let them do their job that they are trained to do, which is try and detain some of these agitators that have been causing problems for a couple of hours now. And you know, we have seen so many problems this week. We had multiple businesses that were vandalized. We have graffiti all over downtown. It has been a lot of difficult situations for folks who live, work, and have businesses here in this community. And so they are doing their best to make sure that doesn't happen again tonight. We are an hour and a half away from the curfew that was enacted several days ago. So we already have an unlawful assembly. At that point, we're going to have a curfew violation also at 8 p.m. And that's when you can see everybody will be, in fact, taken into custody, whether they are arrested and charged or just taken into custody and detained. That remains to be seen, depending on what the police department wants to do and how they want to handle them, and also what their violation may have been. But again, a very strong presence by the Los Angeles Police Department, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and some National Guard members that we saw. They've really also been making a good use of their mounted units today to disperse this crowd. I mean, it was so heart-stopping earlier in the week when we saw firecrackers being shown at the Los Angeles Police Department horses. We certainly don't want to see anything like that happen again. And so they are really trying to use what I like to call controlled chaos, as the police department knows exactly what they're doing right now, and that is trying to get this crowd to disperse.
Joy Benedict, we will check in with you here, but we want to say goodbye to our viewers on Channel 2. Continue our coverage on Channel 9.
And as we continue that coverage, Joy, you made a good point earlier about how, a lot of this is trying to move the crowds that have gotten together here, but not push them to the point of getting into a business district or anywhere where they could cause even more mayhem. That's been obviously a concern of law enforcement and local leaders throughout the week, and of course business owners as well. And now, in terms of cornering off here, I mean, we were just looking at the folks climbing over that fence. It really does seem like law enforcement has, upped the ante a little bit here and started to really do their best to corral everyone and overwhelm anybody who's still lingering in that area.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. You said it right. I like to call it controlled chaos, because on the ground it may look a little chaotic. People running, flashbangs, smoke, the irritants, the gas irritants that go into the air that pepper your eyes and make your eyes water, but they know exactly what they're doing. They are trained for this. They have planned for this. They have had a plan all day long. They probably knew the exact time they were going to start moving everybody back. And once we reached that time, well, they did exactly what they are trained to do, which is try and corral this crowd into an area that they feel is the safest for the ones that are refusing to leave. So folks have had plenty of notice now. We're going on 2 hours that they've started to disperse this crowd. So you have had time to get to your car, and now they are going to start detaining people who are refusing to do so. And that's what you're going to start seeing here. We've seen it every night for the last few nights, so it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who's watching. But I also want to point out, this is a small area of downtown. LA Live, you're not going to see any of this. Over in the business district, you're not going to see any of this. If you are not near this government area over here where the police department is and City Hall is, you're not going to see that there's any problems going on downtown. And I guess that's what we want, right? So we are focusing a lot right now. We have a lot of staff and reporters here in this particular area, but the rest of downtown is running as smoothly and as expected on a Saturday night.
Joy Benedict reporting live for us. We'll check in with you in just a moment, but we do have Sheriff Robert Luna on the line with us. Sheriff Luna, this is Leslie you're speaking to, and Gio, can you hear me?
Leslie and Gio, good to be on with you.
So we know right around 4:30 things took a turn. All day things had been peaceful since about 8:30 a.m. What happened?
You're exactly right. The entire day was very peaceful. You had a lot of folks out, families, dogs. I mean, everybody was doing great until about 4-ish, right before 4, right after 4. You started getting these individuals, these agitators who started to attack police officers. And as always, police will always give an announcement, and people, individuals, not the whole group, obviously went a different direction. And that's what you see now, which I think is very sad, because it wasn't reflective of the great people who were out here peacefully demonstrating and protesting. That's, what we're all about. It's these individual agitators who come here with their intent to commit acts of violence on deputy sheriffs, police officers, and destroy property.
You mentioned, Sheriff Luna, that attacks on officers and deputies is absolutely something that will not be tolerated, not to mention violence against buildings, against other people as well. And then, of course, there are deputies and LAPD officers that have not been shy about detaining and arresting folks over the last few days and over the past week. I doubt there are numbers, but what is the plan in terms of addressing this current situation as we approach the curfew, which is when we tend to see things sort of start, quote unquote, calming down a little bit?
Yeah, so first of all, we're in unified command with the LAPD and the California Highway Patrol. What that basically means is we are collectively making decisions, but LAPD is in the lead because it's happening in this square mile area inside the city of Los Angeles. So they will be making specific decisions. We will be assisting them as the Sheriff's Department and CHP to make sure that we clear out the area to make it safe so that we can try and bring everything back to normal. And realistically, in the process, try and arrest as many people, not that we're protesting and demonstrating. I think I've laid that out very clear, that there's a very clear distinction. It's arresting the individuals that are causing the problems, the ones attacking officers and involved in the destruction of property.
Yeah, and you, along with the mayor, along with LAPD Police Chief McDonald, all came out. You held several press conferences saying there was going to be no room for this type of violence, no room for agitators. To see it really go from what it was earlier today to this, just your thoughts as a sheriff who's been monitoring this.
Yeah, it's my first thought is sadness because there's a lot of very good people that came out to protest a very legitimate cause, to send a very good message, and these individuals committing crimes now that turned a lot of this around, they're diluting the message. We've got to get back to the legitimate folks here, which is 99% of them, who are just trying to make it right. And you know what, Leslie, it's tough because I feel the fear and anxiety. I'm talking to a lot of our community members. I'm very sensitive to it. My background, my family, immigrants, obviously. A lot of our employees come from immigrant families. There's not a big departure from the community that's protesting and our deputies and police officers that are on the front line. We're very sensitive to it. But we should all stand together and come out strong and say, hey, these individuals that are just creating this chaos through criminal activity is 100% unacceptable.
And it sounds like it's worth repeating as well, because obviously speaking to that fear and anxiety when you're looking and watching, from home or from elsewhere, and you see all of this heavy activity, you see hundreds of sheriff's deputies, of LAPD officers, of CHP, all congregated in downtown, it could seem to paint the picture that this is happening everywhere else as well. But it sounds like you're making it clear once again, as you have before, that this is just isolated to one particular area, that the rest of Southern California, for the most part, really, it can go about their days as normal, that this is just really isolated to, a few agitators that are wanting to make a scene, and that you guys are handling it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. This is about a 1 square mile area. It's been the same area every night. The target seems to be that federal complex right adjacent to the 101 freeway. And just so the viewers know, we have handled other protests, not only this week, but throughout today. In other parts of LA County, we're monitoring other protests in adjacent counties. To date, and that could change as it gets dark, almost all of them have been peaceful, which is what we want to see. That is what gives that strong, or gets that strong message across. So our goal is to assist the LAPD. I give a lot of kudos to Chief Jim McDonald and the LAPD. I think they've been doing a great job. Our coordinated efforts with them and other law enforcement agencies, people are saying they've never seen it better than it is right now. I agree with that. And we're constantly communicating with other law enforcement agencies here in Los Angeles County, the other 44 agencies. I'm communicating with the sheriffs, all my neighbor sheriffs, and just making sure that we're okay. And then it's like, hey, if I'm not affected, I'm a resource to you. I'm ready to come in and help. And we have a lot of people in ready, reserve, staged, ready to go. I'm praying we don't need one of them. I'm hoping that we're able to bring everything in this small area back to normal here real soon.
And I just want to talk about some of the resources that you may have there in downtown, because we know there's the special response team, correct? Do you also have the booking team out there? And then when we're seeing some of this less than lethal being deployed, can you talk to us just about what the sheriff's department there deploys?
Without getting into specifics about exact deployment, I can tell your viewers this. The only time our deputy sheriffs are utilizing that less lethal weapon is when they are being attacked or others are being attacked. They're not just using it indiscriminately. If you sometimes the video doesn't show it, but you have individuals launching the craziest things at them, from pyrotechnics to Molotov cocktails, almost anything you can think of. And a lot of these groups are actually bringing, for example, these long pipes where they're launching pyrotechnics at our folks. That is dangerous. That's an assault with a deadly weapon. That's a felony. So that becomes important. So less lethal-wise, that was it. And I'm sorry, that first part of the question again?
What resources do you have out there? I know the special response team may be out there already, correct?
Yes, our sheriff's response team is out there. The other question you asked about is our sheriff's booking teams. Yes, they are out there deployed. They are assisting not only our agency, but CHP and LAPD. So just, again, a word of the wise to the people out there who are refusing to disperse after an unlawful assembly was called. High likelihood you're going to be arrested. We have the resources in place. And honestly, it's going to ruin your night because you're going to get booked. When you get booked, you're going to potentially probably get charged, because I've talked to DA Hochman, and he's not messing around with this, and it's going to cost you money, time, and effort. It's not worth it. Go home for tonight. Let us clean this area out, and hopefully our peaceful protesters will come out tomorrow again to send that positive message they've been trying to send. If your viewers look at a lot of what is happening on your TV screens now, these are people who are refusing to leave. A lot of them have masks on. A lot of them have umbrellas on or umbrellas out, which are used to propel a lot of our less lethal munitions. They are equipped to fight the police. That is not acceptable. That's something we have to deal with, and that's what you see us as the LA County Sheriff's Department, CHP, and the LAPD doing right now.
LA County Sheriff Robert Luna, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time. We certainly appreciate it this evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And yeah, we just heard from Sheriff Luna there, and you heard him say, you know, they're going to continue to assist LAPD. Yeah. They're going to continue to tell this group to go home. If not, you will be arrested. He said it will be a bad night because the DA, Nathan Hochman, is pressing charges depending on the violence that some of these protesters are alleged to have used. Also, if you stay, you know, this is an unlawful assembly, so you're breaking the law in that regard. But this, again, happening in a small section of downtown Los Angeles, near the Civic Center area. I believe what we're looking at may be closer to LAPD here, or I know we're on Broadway here. Yeah. Can't make out the other street we're on. But again, this is near the Civic Center area, near City Hall. We're talking LAPD Metro headquarters. They've been able to keep protesters away from the federal building where we know the National Guard has been staged. But this all coming after hours and hours of very peaceful protests. You see video there. By people at the No Kings March. Yeah, you just saw someone being taken away. It looks like that they were being helped by law enforcement. Couldn't make out who they were, but they were limping.
And you see here on First and Second, just up First and Second. I know Mark Lou's at the desk keeping an eye on things as well. As you take a look at this video here, someone seemingly hurt, maybe a rolled ankle or such. At least that's what it kind of looked like from our perspective. Obviously, Mark, we've seen, I mean, just in the last hour, really, the emphasis by law enforcement of getting in there and pushing the crowds out, and it really seems like they have an upper hand on this, and in terms of getting folks dispersed. Just the sheer number of sheriff's deputies and officers is a lot right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a couple of things that have come up in the last about 40 minutes or so. I've been listening to the radio traffic here at the unified command between LAPD and the LA County Sheriff's Department, and also that great interview with Sheriff Luna. So they have determined that the exit route for all protesters will now be to the south. They will no longer be pushing people to the west or to the east. The primary exit route for all protesters is to go to the south. The second thing, to your point, Gio, is we have seen a general dispersal of protesters to the south, to the west, and that's good news, except for the fact that now the perimeter that LAPD and LA County sheriffs have to maintain is getting larger and larger. And there are some concerns that around the edges of this perimeter that they are seeing some protesters try to double back and get behind police lines. Now, if our director can come out to my screen, I'm going to show you on the map where this is happening. It still continues to be in the far northeast corner of downtown LA. And if we have that ability, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and show you this map here. So what we are seeing here, the first major landmark that I want to talk about here is LA City Hall. Now that has been a source of a lot of the protesters' targets today. We've seen them go down this direction. There was pepper spray here and here. Those protesters then went down in this direction. Now what we're seeing here now is a large majority of protesters went to the west through Grant Park and then down this way. And then we also saw protesters go to the south here. Now, the problem was at 2nd and Broadway and 1st and Broadway. These two locations is where we had some more rocks and bottles issues. And that's where we now see skirmish lines in the form of here and also over here. So the other thing that LAPD is concerned about, is I'm going to zoom in right here, is this. This is the Grand Central Civic Center Grand Park Metro Station. Now, they were concerned that it's been running this whole time, and they actually had people coming off the Metro heading into the protest, right into the middle of pepper balls and flashbangs. So they have asked Metro to actually shut down the Civic Center Grand Park Station for now. Now, our last camera shot that we had was looking this direction. So we know that there are protesters in this area, and they are trying to push them to the south. That is the corridor that LAPD wants all of these protesters to go. But looking at this here, you're going to see at first they just had to monitor the perimeter here. Now the perimeter is in this area. Then they're going to have to worry about all of that. So this is why they're worried about stretching their officers and deputies thin. They want to continue to tell these protesters to please disperse the area and head to the south. and hopefully this can end peacefully as we head closer and closer to the curfew, which is going to take place right in this area in about an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, and you're looking at that crowd, Gio, and you can make out that it is maybe close to 100 people, maybe give or take. Not as big as we've definitely seen in the past, definitely thinning out. But at this point, LAPD continues to tell us, and you heard from the sheriff, that there are a few agitators in this group that remains that continue to throw fireworks at officers, concrete at officers, just glass. So the situation still remains one where law enforcement is going to continue to call for an unlawful assembly, use less lethal. The sheriff said that his department will not use less lethal unless they are being attacked.
And that's going to be the interesting thing to see as we start to approach that curfew hour, because what we've noticed in just this past week when the curfew was first instituted, and then we were keeping an eye on downtown from the 8 o'clock hour and then into the rest of the evening, I mean, crowds really started to dissipate. Now, granted, on the one hand, those are weeknights, those are school nights, work nights, etc. As you take a live look there on the left side of your screen, another row or collection of LAPD officers moving seemingly toward that crowd. This is the largest congregation that we are keeping an eye on at the moment, it seems, with the number of flags and banners. So then on the other hand, it comes to the point of seeing how this turns into a weekend, because we know certainly people have more time. It's a Saturday night as opposed to a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, Thursday night. So there's that on top of the fact that we've seen such an outward push by LAPD, by sheriff's deputies, by law enforcement here in downtown with vehicles as well. I mean, it's not just officers in their tactical gear. It is vehicles directly behind them. It's the mounted unit as well. I mean, there has been no shortage of officers pushing these crowds out and using those less than lethals to clear them out from locations. But to Mark's point, then you start getting into a situation where the perimeter becomes a little bit more difficult to maintain, and perhaps folks are circling back. So the hope there is that people finally get the message and start dispersing, and then the thinning out then really starts to settle the crowd down. But that is going to be the number one thing we keep an eye on in this next hour and 10 minutes as we get to the 8 o'clock curfew, when things start getting dark, because then, of course, going back to our earlier notes, is that when things get dark, that's when certain situations start to escalate, as right now you see another group of LAPD officers start to have some pep in their step and move toward looks like the crowd. I'm trying to get a marker there, but no shortage. I mean, that's First Street there. No shortage of officers at all. I mean, they certainly outnumber protesters by a heavy amount at this moment in downtown LA.
Yeah, at least that's how we're viewing it from our vantage point here. But yeah, that is an army of LAPD officers who have been preparing for this for several days. Not only have many been engaged in situations like this for the last week, but we know LAPD now in unified command with CHP as well as the Sheriff's Department all working together right now. LAPD, the lead agency on this, but take a look, you can just make out all the media, and then you have just like an army of LAPD officers. And in front of them, there are still some of these protesters who have decided to linger around. You can see many of the people on the front lines here holding up signs and pushing back as LAPD and officials are pushing forward.
Yeah, and even though you're not seeing, based on this camera view right now, these protesters really engaging with officers in the sense of throwing things at them, Joy, it is worth mentioning again, this unlawful assembly has been declared, so these folks are being told to leave right now. Your First Amendment right to protest in this case does not apply. They're going to push them out one way or the other.
Yeah, that's right. We are live here with the police department as they are trying to push people back. We're on First Street, or I should say just west of First and Broadway right now. And so they've been allowing us to get closer and closer every time that they move. In front of about the I'd say 50 or so, maybe up to 100 officers in front of us are a small group of protesters, and those are the ones they're trying to corner together that they will be detaining if they do not find a way out of this situation. It does not appear that in the distance, once we get further down, there's any other line. So if they continue to move and disperse, they may not get arrested. But again, this is all part of the process. It is the game of chess that we've been talking about for quite some time. What's behind us? I'm sorry. Oh, I see. They're bringing some more officers in from the left-hand side. We just want to make sure that they get us through, so they were telling us to pause for a second. But they're basically allowing us to be on the sidewalk as they are advancing forward, trying to disperse the crowd in what I like to call the game of chess, as they're trying to get everyone to disperse. It's a little bit of what I like to also refer to as organized chaos, because although it may look a little chaotic for the protesters and the demonstrators who have been out here, this is a very well-planned and now executed attempt to disperse the crowd once things became unruly. We've been talking about the time frames. It is almost 7 o'clock. That means we are an hour away from what is be considered curfew, and we are already into an unlawful assembly that has been declared here in the area. So from where we are standing on the Broadway and First area, as we have been moving from City Hall to this area, then that is what you are seeing. It's just a waiting game at this point, who's going to leave and who's going to stick around to get arrested, as many people are doing this just simply because they know that's coming and they want that to be their mark on history. That's what we see every time we have demonstrations like this. We have a lot of very passionate people. You also have a lot of people who are just simply here to be agitators and cause some problems. So you see a mix of that at this stage of the day, after what has been a very long day of demonstrating, most of it very, very peaceful. We went from 8:30 to about 4:30 this afternoon with not even an issue. So that is 8 hours of not even an issue, of 25,000 people here downtown following the laws, doing what they're supposed to do. And it was really a festival and a very lighthearted a day for so many families, people of all generations who came in here to let their voices be heard and express their concerns with so many things going on, not only here in Los Angeles, but with the current administration in the White House, and things that are the battleground between the Reds and the Blues, and sort of California being stuck in the middle. But now what you're seeing is the other group. At around 4:30, for those who are just joining us right now, that's when we first saw the National Guard start to push demonstrators away from the federal building as they were working their way at the end of the protest from City Hall to the federal building. So the National Guard started moving them back. Then you had the Los Angeles Police Department with their mounted unit that came, also starting to push things back. Once the officers felt that things were being thrown at them, that is when they started using those less than lethal tactics that we discussed. Those are the things that you saw with the flashbangs and the chemicals that they were putting in the air. The Sheriff's Department says it's not tear gas, but more of a chemical irritant, as they don't use tear gas anymore. So they used that. They also used the smoke bombs that you could see as they were trying to get folks to disperse, and you continue to see some agitators throwing things at the officers. Then you also had the Sheriff's Department that were using, you can see the police department have them as well, the green straps. Those are the less than lethal rubber bullets, as we like to call them. They're pretty big, those are 40 millimeters, so they're about 3 inches long or so when you look at them, and they're projectiles that are used to hit people in their lower legs or so who are not going with the crowd. And so we've been seeing a lot of that throughout the evening since this all started, becoming a little bit more heightened maybe 2.5 hours ago or so. And look at this long line of police cars that are following the officers on foot, just to make sure. This is another tactic, right? The police cars are here to make sure that if the crowd gets past the officers, one, they have extra backup, and then also it's harder to get through all of these vehicles. As we continue to move forward, you can also hear some of the chanting of the folks that simply don't want to go. And as I said, many people are here simply to get detained. They are here simply to get arrested. This is part of the plan. If they wanted to leave by now, they have had several hours to do so peacefully. So this is a choice. I'll send it back to you guys.
Joy Benedict, live in downtown LA. Joy, thank you. Yeah, even just in the midst of her live shot there, you can see the deliberate nature with which LAPD is moving forward. And, you know, we always go back to what we can see, and judging by their body language, it just seems, you know, it's obviously intentional, it's deliberate, but it's not, you know, necessarily aggressive in this particular moment right here. It's just moving this crowd out.
Continue this routine of letting people know this is an unlawful assembly. We're going to continue moving forward. And as Mark Liu was telling us, their plan is really to continue to move people to the south and give them that exit route. We're going to continue our coverage here on KCAL until about 7 p.m. So I do want to turn it over to Mark Liu. If you're monitoring anything that we should know for our viewers as we head, closer to this curfew, but also have been monitoring this protest here for the last 2 hours now.
Yeah, it looks like LAPD and LA County sheriffs have formulated a pretty strict plan to continue the kind of action that we are seeing right here in front of us. Now we are as far south as 2nd Street, as Broadway. They continue to move south. Looking here, the action has moved from the area of City Hall, which is the landmark I want to show you here in downtown LA, down these corridors of Broadway and Main. We saw a big dispersal here. These groups have gone in this direction, so that's good news for the eastern side of this protest. And then we saw these groups that are now heading to the south here along Broadway, and now we are even here approaching 2nd Street. So we continue to see a motion towards the southern part of downtown LA as elements of LAPD and the LA County Sheriffs continue to move in that southbound direction. This is also really good news for any sort of concerns that law enforcement had along the 101, as they had blocking forces here at Broadway, Main, and Los Angeles. They did not want people going on the freeway. But as this curfew rapidly approaches, 1 hour to go, everyone here who is in the southbound direction from Broadway and Main, Los Angeles, and even Hill Street, they are going to have to find a way out through the southern part, through this commercial area of downtown LA. And there are opportunities there to disperse. Certainly there are places that they could go from out into that direction. But right now we continue to see LAPD use these pepper spray balls and these flashbangs in order to get people to continue to move to the south. That is the direction of exit that they want these protesters to disperse tonight.
Mark Liu at the desk. Mark, thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be something we continue to monitor throughout the night, especially as crowds potentially start dispersing once this curfew starts hitting in the next hour. Yeah,
and this follows a day of No Kings protests nationally. 2,000 of these protests happening nationally on the same day that President Trump held a parade in Washington celebrating the Army's 250th anniversary. It also falls on his 79th birthday, but these No Kings protests protesting that, as well as other things, including here in Los Angeles, the ice sweeps we have seen. We know at some point at the height of this protest, 25,000 people were here downtown. We spoke to the sheriff, who says from 8:30 to about 4 p.m., 4:30, things remained peaceful. They had no issues. There were plenty of people downtown. It was right around 4:30 that things took a turn. They say protesters started throwing things at officers, a very small amount. The people that lingered around started throwing fireworks at officers here, and this is the situation we now have. Yeah, and we'll continue to monitor for you as the evening progresses. We'll break in, of course, as needed throughout the evening. Otherwise, we will see you back here for KCAL News at 8 p.m.
This is KCAL News Mornings.
Good morning, everyone. Today is June 14th. I'm Rachel Kim.
And I'm Christine Lazar. Welcome to KCAL News at 9 and streaming on CBS News Los Angeles. We want to start off with a look at your weather with meteorologist Alex Biston. Alex, it is Father's Day weekend, and the sun is eventually going to come out and shine on our Southern California.
Yes, and Christina, Rachel, already seeing the sunshine in many locations. As we take a look at the satellite radar, you can see the clouds still hanging across the LA basin into the